The following program is a production of the Southern University Mass Communication Department.
Good evening, Baton Rouge. It's such a pleasure to have you take your time out of your busy schedule to tune in. I'm your host, Regine Williams, and I'd personally like to thank you for tuning in to Real Talk with Regine, where all talk is real talk. Statistics show that Baton Rouge, Louisiana is ranked 4th in the United States for the most AIDS cases and 1st in Louisiana. Sadly, over 75% of all HIV/AIDS cases affect the African American population. My guest today is Reverend A.J. Johnson. He is the founder of the Baton Rouge AIDS Society, a local youth mentor, and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. After today, I hope that my viewers are enlightened on HIV/AIDS, not only in Louisiana, but in our hometown, Baton Rouge. My guest today is Reverend A.J. Johnson. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so how did you come up with the Baton Rouge AIDS Society out of all things?
Well, you know, I spent a lot of time working with youth and working on college campuses, and I've seen a lot of people talk about HIV and STDs, but they didn't keep it real. And I felt that, you know, as the first minority AIDS servicing organization in Baton Rouge, my approach had to be something that can cater not just to our people, but to people. Mm-hmm. We can't keep talking about things and sugarcoating stuff and beating around the bush when we're dealing with something that's important to our lives. And some people are just scared or want to sugarcoat talking about sex. And sex is in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. We shouldn't be afraid to talk about it, especially when we have STDs and HIV in our community at such high levels.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember where you first performed your first HIV test?
Well, I first performed my first HIV test. Actually, I used to work for an agency called Friends for Life. They're not here anymore. And but before that, I was working with the Office of Public Health STD clinic. So that would have been where I first started doing HIV and STD screening: syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and HIV. And I remember those days, you know, because as a disease intervention specialist, I was the guy that knocked on your door. Mm-hmm. I was the guy that let you know that somebody that you've been with tested positive and you may have been exposed. So and during those times, finding people and medication wasn't the same as today. I remember 3 cases where when I went and knocked on somebody's door, they were actually dead already. Mm-hmm. So we're thankful for medication and being able to do things a little differently than we used to. But the fear of testing was a big thing back then. Okay.
So can you please explain to the viewers how HIV is passed from one person to another?
You know, we want to think about HIV still today. A lot of people want to think about HIV as a gay disease, mm-hmm. Even a white gay disease, and we have to stop thinking like that. Of course, anal sex, no matter what your sexual preference is, it can be heterosexual anal sex. It's still, anal sex is the #1 way of transmitting HIV. Now that's because, you know, tissues are torn, blood is present, and you know, like again, it doesn't matter if you're homosexual or heterosexual. If you engage in that activity, that's the highest rate, if unprotected, mm-hmm. of transmitting HIV. Intravenous drug use used to be a big thing a long time ago, mm-hmm. like in 1990s, a long time ago. But now heterosexual activity is the #1 way, especially for females, of getting infected with HIV. And we're still thinking that it's a gay person disease, or a prostitute, or intravenous drug user, or somebody that did something wrong to get HIV. And that's not the case today. If you have a partner who is not faithful to you, mm-hmm. and or you don't even know their HIV status, you can open yourself up to getting HIV, even though you have one partner. If you don't know your partner's status and you don't know your status, you can infect that person or get infected by that person.
Okay, I know that some people, rumors have it that you could get HIV from oral sex. Is that possible?
Not just HIV, but you can get a lot of STDs mm-hmm. from oral sex. mean, there have been movies about oral sex in high schools, and people want to, well, I'm still a virgin if I engage in oral sex. Well, the only thing you can't get from oral sex is pregnant. But you can get everything else. You can get gonorrhea of the mouth. You can get HIV, because the thing is that even, let me break it down to you this way. If you eat on an orange and you have a small cut in your mouth, and then it starts to burn, right? Now, it wasn't burning before that, but now it starts to burn. The thing is, you might not be aware of a small cut that you received from whatever you ate earlier that day. You may have cut yourself and just don't know about it, but we're talking about something that's microscopic. So if you engage in oral sex, semen, vaginal secretions, they carry the virus. And it only has to be a little, it don't have to be like, oh, well, pre-cum, all that carries the virus. So if the virus gets in your mouth, unlike the citrus, you're not going to feel it until you feel the impact of having a positive test result. So yes, you can get infected, even though the infection rate is low, it's still a possibility. So you are still engaging in a risky activity. It's just not a high risk activity. But when it comes down to HIV, who wants to take a risk?
That's true, that's true. So how long does it actually take for a person to come in contact with the virus?
Well, coming into contact with it and testing positive for it are two different things. You could, like we were saying earlier, you know, as soon as you engage in unprotected intercourse, as soon as you share a needle, even French kissing could put you at a risk. So as soon as you engage in a risk activity, there's a possibility of infection. Now, how long does it take to show up? Well, we have come a long way in testing with that as well. We used to have to send tests away and wait 2 weeks for it to come back. Now we are on our 5th generation of rapid tests, which means you get your results in 20 minutes. The test that we use now is Allure, a determined test that tests for the antibodies and the antigen. So instead of waiting a 6-month period, now it's even down to 1 month. So you can find out your test results if you have experienced any risk activities within 1 month from the time you've been exposed.
Okay, and I know HIV also turns into AIDS. So how long does that take for the virus to go to full-blown AIDS? Now,
you said a couple of things. As an educator, I have to make sure we know. HIV does not turn into AIDS.
Okay.
But our community believes that. Like, you get HIV and then later on it turns into this other thing. You always have HIV. It's like going to school. You're a freshman, sophomore, and junior and senior. But you're always a student. And you can be a student without being a senior, but you can't be a senior without being a student. Well, HIV works the same way. You always have HIV. You just get at different levels of it. Now, you can have HIV without an AIDS diagnosis, but you cannot have an AIDS diagnosis without HIV. There's no such thing as full-blown AIDS. That terminology came from when they didn't know it was a virus. So the only thing they knew, they called it AIDS because they wanted to call it something. They called it AIDS. And because they didn't know if it was bacterial or viral, they didn't know. So when a person started dying and had symptoms, they say he has full-blown AIDS. Well, now we know better. So there's no full-blown AIDS. If anything was full-blown, it would be full-blown HIV. So what happens is you always have HIV. HIV gets to that senior level, that last stage. That last stage is when your T cells have a count of 200 or lower and or some opportunistic infections. That's what graduates you to your senior level, and that's the AIDS diagnosis level. After that level, instead of graduation, as with a student is death. Now, each level depends on each person. For example, if you have HIV and you don't know it, and your partner has HIV and you don't know it, and you keep having unprotected sex, and y'all, whoever cheated, stop cheating, and y'all stay with each other the rest of your life, you keep having unprotected sex. Well, for the two of you, you might not see 3 years because you're giving each other more HIV. Think of yourself as having a cold. You don't want to kiss your boyfriend if you have a cold,
right.
and he got a cold. You taking medication for your cold.
Right.
You don't feel like kissing nobody. But if you have HIV and you don't know it, you're giving each other more HIV, and you're not on any medication, you're not seeing a physician, and you're just increasing your death sentence. So it depends on each person. That person's age depends, like a person that's older. That younger person's immune system might help them live a little longer. The same person doing the same thing but older might shorten their lifespan even more.
That's true. So can you explain to us what are some symptoms one might experience?
Okay, now one thing about symptoms is that HIV symptoms don't belong just to HIV. Mm-hmm. So if you have someone that have some of the symptoms we're talking about, don't run and say, you got HIV, you know, you got that gangster, you know. Yeah. The thing is though, HIV, there are so many different symptoms. Rapid weight loss is one. You start losing weight and you didn't change no diet, the weight. You ever notice that, I think it's a phenomenal experience to look at how your weight stays the same. Mm-hmm. Your weight pretty much stays the same unless you drastically change your eating pattern. But if the same output, you're not working out no more, you're eating the same, your weight pretty much stays the same. So if you all of a sudden lose 40 pounds and you ain't do nothing different,
Mm-hmm.
where'd that come from? You know, you didn't start eating salads or nothing like that. You didn't start working out. You just lost 40 pounds. And you find that you've been losing weight, right? That's a problem. Mm-hmm. Something's going on with your body. So rapid weight loss is one of the symptoms. Diarrhea is a bad symptom. Now, I don't know about you, but, you know, I'm not ready to be at that stage where I'm wearing Depends all day, you know, because I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And if you get infected with HIV, you don't have any control over your body. That diarrhea can occur at any time. While you're in a meeting, while you're at Walmart, you know, it doesn't matter. While you're sleeping. And it's not like, you know, most of the symptoms with HIV, they're going to be extreme. Just like we say weight loss, extreme. Not you lost 5 pounds, but you lost like 40 in 2 weeks. Diarrhea is extreme. Not that you just went to the bathroom that one day and had a problem, but it's been like all this week you've been having problems, mm-hmm. uncontrollable problems. That's a symptom that's associated with HIV. Another symptom is, you know, you can't get rid of colds and stuff as you used to. Your immune system is compromised so much that everything that comes your way seems to take longer. You know, your body can't repair itself as easily. So a cold will last you a longer time, might turn into pneumonia, you know, because your body just cannot fight things. Mm-hmm. So you got so many, you know, not palmar rashes, that's with syphilis, but you can have Kaposi sarcoma, which are cancerous sores on your body. You can have loss of memory, you know, where you just, and again, we're talking about extreme cases. All of these symptoms occurring, and then the worst thing about it is that you don't have to have any symptoms. You don't have to have any symptoms at all, and you can be walking around with HIV for over 10 years, you know, over 20 years. And now you have a symptom, never saw the doctor. But the problem with that is if you never see the doctor, when it hits, which is a problem in our state, 34% of the people who test positive for HIV find out within 6 months that they have an AIDS diagnosis, which means that soon when they enrolled in school, they are a senior. Like, how would you like if you enrolled in school and soon when you enroll, they say, you're graduating next month. You're like, right, what?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You're like, what? I mean, I didn't even enjoy my college life. So if you get infected and you don't know, and symptoms occur, when you go to the doctor will say you're HIV positive, and in 6 months they say you have an AIDS diagnosis. Your whole life is like coming to an end.
In shambles, right. I know that you go to different schools and universities, one being Southern University, which is my school. I've always wanted to know, are students eager to get tested whenever y'all come?
I don't think we've advanced that far. Eager is a strong word. I think that students, both here at Southern and other places that we go to, I think students are taking more ownership to their status. I think students are more willing to say, I want to know. I might think I'm negative, but I want to know. So when testing is available on campus, the students are coming out to get tested in numbers that were not seen in the earlier years. that's also credited toward rapid test results. So you can get your results in 20 minutes. It's also credited to the fact that you don't have to draw blood from your arm. You know, a simple swab. And we can find out in 20 minutes. These are preliminary tests, just like a pregnancy test. So if you come back positive, there are follow-up tests, which is called preliminary positive, because you have to follow up. Just like if you got a test from Walgreens for pregnancy, if it comes back positive, you still have to see your doctor. So yes, students are taking more ownership to their status. And even on a dating level, that I always hear students say, I'm not getting with nobody unless they can show me a piece of paper. And I'm like, take the Missouri, show me. If you can't show a current HIV test result, don't do nothing. Not even kiss, because you don't know.
Right, right. Can you tell us what are some ways to improve one's immune system? I guess to help build the immune system to fight the virus.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is if a person is HIV positive, they should see a doctor. The doctor is going to work with them to decide what type of medicines they should take. If a person has a healthy immune system already, they're not going to just jumpstart them on medication, because the medicine is toxic. I don't know about you, but I have trouble taking Tylenol the right way. If they say take every 4 hours, you got to take it every 4 hours. You can't double up. It's not like a birth control pill. You can't say, well, I'm going to take 2 today. You can't do that. This stuff, one of the side effects to the medicine is death. You know, so you know, the thing is, you have to build your immune system, but they look at whether your immune system is extremely compromised. Then there's medicine that can assist in the body creating antibodies to fight the virus, to extend a person's life, that the virus becomes more manageable, not curable still, but more manageable. And that's an important part. There are medications out there now called PrEP that you can take if you're HIV negative, to try to assist you in staying negative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, but these are still medicines that take a risk. But if somebody's engaging in high-risk activities, they might want to, you know, go ahead and take that risk and take that medication to prevent them from getting infected. But of course, we would be removed if we wouldn't say that the best medication out here is abstinence. If you don't do nothing, you can't get nothing. Now, that's a hard thing to keep real once you find somebody you want to be with. But if you don't do nothing, you can't get nothing. Nothing. But if you're going to do something, use protection. Find out, I don't care if you find out their status, still use protection. If somebody say, well, I'm on birth control pill. Well, birth control pill and a condom is a win-win. We don't have to even converse about whether or not it's about infections. It's about protection, period.
Okay, our numbers in Louisiana are very high. What do you think it will take for our numbers to decrease?
Money. And I say that and I laugh. I thank God that Baton Rouge AIDS Society is 18 years old and we're a testing and training facility. But funding has been just every year lower and lower, every governor lower and lower. CDC only awards 4% of its entire budget toward prevention. You know, organizations are leaning more away from prevention and more into treatment. And the thing is that, you know, we're not preparing for our future. We need more support in the community-based organizations in the prevention area, because you got to understand something that happens. When you have a new infection, somebody was positive and somebody was negative. We're spending more money educating positives on prevention, but there are still people that's intentionally going into the community, knowing they're positive, infecting other people. And there are laws against that. That person could be incarcerated knowing that they were positive and infecting another person. And when a black person does that, I call it black on black crime. Because you knew you had HIV and you're destroying. You can say genocide, they created HIV for this and that, but you are the one out there doing this. And so there's a lot of education that's needed for HIV positive people for prevention. But on the other side, there is prevention with negatives. So if you know you're negative and you're educated on how you get infected and testing and everything else. And anytime you engage in sex, you protect yourself and you know how to use condoms right, and you make sure your partner is tested and stuff, then I can help keep you negative. Then you won't be another positive. Because if we keep having more positives, we're going to have an increase in HIV rates and STD rates.
Okay. What is one of the major causes? I know a lot of people, they always blame it on African Americans. They say we're the ones who spread the virus. But what about Caucasians, you know?
Yeah, I don't care who you are. You know, you can be black, white, or green, get you tested. We got to remember one thing the American Red Cross say, it's not who you are, it's what you do. That's their number one response to a question like that. And I'm also one of the American Red Cross instructors. And the thing is that we are so caught up on statistics. Okay, if over 75% of the people who are infected in our area are African Americans, I'm not going to sleep with 75% of them anyway. So what statistics going to do? It's an individual thing, and that's what we got to get back to. It's an individual thing. If you sleep with somebody, you can get infected. You'll become part of the new statistics. Right now, the number one way of getting infected for men is homosexual activity. Men having sex with men. On a flip side of that, on a national level, African American men make up 50% of all the AIDS cases of men who have sex with men. So yeah, our numbers as African Americans are totally disproportionate, and it is a state of emergency.
I know that you go to universities and you talk to older people, but have you ever traveled to like a elementary or a middle school to instill it in them while they're young?
Yep. Yes, we do. We've done just about every age group, but how you present the information is different. Because you can keep it real everywhere you go, but see, on the college level, you can keep it real and sometimes a little raw. Because you're dealing with adults. You can't do that with children, and you don't need to. But you do need to explain with children that, you know, like sometimes we've had to counsel parents and their children, parents who are HIV positive, and you use words like sick. You know, mama don't always have a lot of energy. You don't have to get into sexual intercourse and all this other condom use and all that stuff. But, you know, you talk to people about experimenting and sharing with each other on ways that is not appropriate. And when you share with each other, it could cause infections and make you feel sick. And you talk on those levels. Because yes, guess what? Kids are not doing some things, but the problem we have with more of the adults, as you read in the news over and over again, of an adult who's HIV positive that has infected some child. So it becomes to the point that when a child is at a level to understand, we have to educate them that don't let people do things to you that you are uncomfortable with, because it could result in these things.
Okay, have you ever had a couple come get tested together? And have you ever had to break the news down to them?
You have some good questions. We are actually the only agency in the state of Louisiana that I know of that has completed the curriculum that is online with the Center for Disease Control on an intervention called couples counseling.
Oh, wow.
And it is a session that takes about an hour to do at least. So it's not going to be you walk in, get your results in 20 minutes and leave, because you're dealing with like 4 relationships going on there. You know, you have to communicate, the partner has to communicate with the other partner. You have to be able to communicate with each of them, and all 3 of us have to be able to communicate together. So you have 4 things going on at the same time. You have to be able to diffuse blame, because whatever brought them to this point. And I think it's a positive thing, because, you know, you put the cards on the table. If both partners are willing to be honest,
right,
put the cards on the table, there is something that brought them there. So in addition, as a minister, I'm also able to help them on a spiritual level, because what brought them there is to, one, find out if there's an infection, but then there's a problem with the relationship. So can we mend that and move on? And what will that take? So there's a deep need for a middle person to be able to do that counseling, and the Center for Disease Control curriculum is very extensive in training any individual, not just a minister, how to go through that. And I hope that other agencies across the state is not funded right now. So it's another type of service that we provide. And I hope other agencies would take that into consideration.
Okay, thanks for coming by today.
All right, thanks for
and
having
being
me.
on my show. I really appreciate the vital information.
Okay.
Thank you. After this episode, I really hope that my viewers take the fact that HIV/AIDS is not a joke and the statistics are high in our community. Stay tuned for the next episode of Real Talk with Regine, where all talk is real talk. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to reach me, my email is regine_williams@aol.com.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Southern University Mass Communication Department.